Well, originally MS-13 and 18th Street were friendly because 18th Street allowed Salvadorians to join, which is one of the only gangs that allowed that because the other gangs were all Mexicans. But then a situation happened, and this is sort of fuzzy because, one account says that it was over a fight over a girl in 1989 where an MS-13 member was killed and created a whole cycle. But I think you talked about a situation where Shaggy got killed.
Yeah.
Is that the same situation or?
Yeah, but it happened in 92.
What do you mean?
It didn't happen in 89.
It happened in 92?
92.
Okay.
So
that was a friend of yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was going to Manuel Lards. Well, we met at Manuel Lards High School, which just around the corner from this happened on Normandy and King Boulevard. And, obviously this fight took place and then somebody came back with a weapon and Shaggy got killed. And basically that was no stopping what came after that. I think the level of violence that was created between these two gangs, was because they have had relationships with each other. I mean, people had children with each other. They hung out with each other. They knew the hiding spaces. They knew where people lived, right? And they have been in, we have been in a relationship for over a decade, right? So we never thought that something like this could happen between our two neighborhoods because we were just big. We had, Salvadorians, Central Americans on each. But this basically broke that relationship, and a real period of violence came over throughout the different areas that the neighborhoods, and there were deaths on both sides like we never seen before.
Was there any effort for the leaders to get together to stop this? Because, a gang war doesn't help anybody. It stops business, it causes police presence constantly. When murders are happening, it gets in the media, then there's all types of crackdowns and outrage and so forth. And, because you guys were essentially moving drugs at the time to finance the operations, or was it other?
No.
Not at all?
No, man. At that time, the gangs in the area that we hung out were not that sophisticated. They have not developed that sophistication of drugs. We had people that would come in and sell drugs in our neighborhoods and just feed us drugs or here, let us party by, beers and whatnot, and that made us happy, right? We weren't into any, high level, criminal organizing around drug sales and all that stuff. Yeah, some of them sell marijuana and stuff, some cocaine, but it wasn't that level of sophistication.
Right, but what about robbing drug dealers and so forth?
Well, that also became an issue, right? But it would be a low level, right? It didn't produce this $100,000, $50,000, $20,000 that you were going after.
Yeah,
it was just something that will help you throughout the day, party and use drugs. So what did happen was that gang injunctions came into play. So once you had a gang member like myself, which I never got into drug selling, man. I never liked it. I never liked chasing cars for a dime bag and shit. But you had gang members that were actually making, a profit or, being able to get food for themselves and, drugs or whatever, right? They weren't selling these drugs to become rich, But what happened was that once these gang injunctions came into play, gang members couldn't be in the streets anymore because they would be targeted just because they were gang members. So that changed the way, the gang started to operate, right?
Right. Well, at the time that this war started, 18th Street was bigger than MS-13.
Yeah.
So you guys were outnumbered.
Still is.
Still is. So you have this war that's happening in the same neighborhoods with a gang that's bigger than yours. So how bad was it during this time?
It was bad. You had the level of, the crack epidemic, right? You had the crack epidemic. You had now high intensity weapons coming in, the AK-47, the Uzis, right? All this military equipment that was just basically thrown into our communities from who? Well, the history shows that the CIA was bringing all these drugs and stuff into our communities. And so they infested our communities with weapons that now every gang member, wanted one. And it became something that, we saw going back and forth throughout this period, where people were dying behind, innocent people for the most part were dying behind the drive-by shootings that became common. So obviously, there was many deaths between, not just between 18th Street and MS, but all the other gangs in the area, that were at war with each other as well.